scholars say that we should find some other options given the new balance of power. No doubt, Yalta-Potsdam system was initially discussed and designed by writing the UN Charter. The states who fought Nazism did so, first and foremost the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, the United States, and later, when the key fundamental principles of the post-war world order were agreed upon, France, and after the revolution in China, the People's China Republic also became the permanent member of the UN Security Council. The Charter, and it is my strong belief, does not need any improvements in terms of principles. The principles of equal rights, of self-determination of peoples, the sovereign equality of states, of territorial integrity of those states whose government behave appropriately, respect the rights of all nations living on a given territory, and that is why represent the whole population living on their territory, which is not the case with the Kiev regime in Kiev, which came to power as a result of a coup d'etat 11 years ago. From day one, they never represented neither the people of Crimea, nor the people of Donbass. All these principles are just. But there is one thing. Proponents of the UN reforms say that the key injustice, the main injustice, is the permanent membership of some states in the UN Security Council with a veto right. We have explained on numerous occasions that this is a special mechanism which was non-existent in the previous structures in the world community. There were no bodies, no international bodies with special rights, but establishment of the permanent members mechanism was the lesson taught by the League of Nations. There was one state, one vote principle, and this did not allow people to give additional privileges to great powers, but it also prevented more influential powers to implement their special responsibility. They could not feel, they could not perceive their responsibility for the destiny of the systems included in the League of Nations systems. All other principles are absolutely just, and they should be implemented comprehensively, not selectively. Speaking about the UN Security Council reform, of course we need one, because those states who are especially responsible in world economy, in world finance, in world politics, and also in military scenarios, they are not represented in the UN Security Council. We have stated repeatedly that such states as India and China, I apologize, I mean India and Brazil, according to all criteria, they have deserved long ago permanent membership in the UN Security Council. And similar is also just about the African representation in the UN Security Council. On the other hand, the West is trying to disrupt this process by all possible means. They are trying to guarantee their dominance. And now, out of 15 permanent members, they have 6 representing the West, and the United States, among key candidates to the UN permanent presidentship, they name Germany and Japan. They have no independent voice in world policy. They are just blindly following the US political course. And when the United States press their interests directly, their voice is never heard, as it was the case with Chancellor Scholz when the gas pipelines were exploded. He just shied away from this question. He looked away from it. This is also the case of Japan, which is fully dependent on the United States. It is unfair. The West has 6 seats out of 15. We should increase the representation of the developing states. And together with this UN Security Council reform, we will make the West understand that it is no longer capable to impose on the whole world for many centuries its own rules, to pump out resources from Africa, Asia, and Latin America to live at the expense of others, and that we should seek the balance of interests. And we have a very good foundation for that. The International Legal Foundation of the Yalta-Potsdam System, International World Order, and the UN Charter. We should only implement it. They should understand that they can no longer rule the world. Speaking about Serbia, of course we want our relations with Serbia to be based exclusively on the interests of the Russian and Serbian people, on the interests of our states. In the overwhelming majority of cases, we have convergent positions, and these relations have concrete agreements, have concrete projects, including in energy, approved by heads of states, approved by governments, approved by companies and enterprises. We have shared and joint production. I mean, the corporation Serbian.
Что ни при каких обстоятельствах она не подлежит национализации. Поэтому, когда сейчас американцы, даже не американцы в целом, а вот эта администрация Байдена, у демократов есть такие манеры в политике в американской, напоследок нагадить
for people to self-determination. We support each other in the framework of international organizations. Of course, we see that they are twisting the arms of Serbia. And when President Vučić says that we will not divert from our course to the EU accession, and in response, he hears they say, we are waiting for you here, but first you have to recognize the independence of Kosovo. They are encouraging Serbia to make an act of self-humiliation, and also they want them to join the sanctions against the Russian Federation. Simultaneously, they want not only self-humiliation, but they want them to betray their ally. President Vučić has repeatedly stated that this policy is unacceptable, which is being pushed forward by Europe, the European Union, which is being approved of by the United States. Even from the legal point of view, this situation demands quite courageous decisions and solutions. When you have an agreement with someone which has nothing to do with us, but which has to do with our willingness and our aspiration to punish your partner, because we just want to do so. And this also backfired to you. It is up to the Serbian people to decide. The Vice Prime Minister, who represented Serbia during BRICS summit in Kazan, he made a clear statement in this regard. We will wait and see. We are in contact, we are in touch with our Serbian friends. We will hold urgent consultations and we expect their reaction. RT Spanish, the floor is yours. Minister Lavrov, just lately, Venezuela held the inauguration ceremony of Nicolas Maduro, the legitimately elected president of the state. However, his rival at the election still says that he is the winner of the election. It is considered to be the winner by some other states, including the US. What do you think of the situation? Perhaps this situation is similar to the one we had during the previous election. What is the objective? What is the objective of Washington? In principle, Washington is blinded by its dominance, by its impunity, by its right to decide the fates of all the people in the world. It is not manifested only in Latin America, in Venezuela. Mr. Gonzalez, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, they were also proclaimed as legitimate representatives of Belarus. At least she is received in the Council of Europe and some other Europe-centered organizations. This is what they think of themselves, and this means that they despise the whole world. This is a shameless statement. When we say democracy, this means only one thing. I will do what I want. Like Blinken put it, those who do not listen to us, they won't be invited to the democratic table. They will be on the menu. This is the clear manifestation of what they are doing. And they believe that they are entitled to decide the outcomes, the results of the election. Well, a state has a right. It's not an obligation. Those who are OSCE members, they can invite international observers. it is not a necessary thing to do. From this Human Rights Bureau, they can invite it.
Вот как они реагировали на выборы в Молдавии, даже не буду описывать, как там было организовано, чтобы не дать проголосовать полумиллионам молдаван.
As well as processes unfolding, in particular in order to incite confrontation and hostility in international affairs. Something our colleagues and our neighbors from the NATO are doing, led by the United States. They are always willing to drive a wedge between us and to seed sow hostilities, be it in South China Sea or be it as they formulated now in the Indo-Pacific region, including also in the Middle East, everywhere. The US have hundreds and hundreds of military bases everywhere, So it wouldn't take a lot of effort to incite a dispute, but we can see their schemes everywhere. They try to create destabilizing and confronting schemes everywhere, and after that, they simply look at how countries that pretended to have some influence in the region spend their efforts, their money, their time due to such provoked crises in order to settle these disputes, while the United States get increasingly more dividends, as they did during World War I, World War II, and in a similar way, the greatest burden of war against Russia with the hands of Ukrainian was put on the European Union. Leaders of the European Union, including France, Germany, and Italy, have to keep silent. Some people from the opposition, like Alternative for Germany and the Sarah-Wagenknecht Alliance and the National Front in France, the opposition do ask why they spend so much money while the poverty level is growing, while they see deindustrialization, when industry is fleeing to the United States because the US has taken steps to make sure that taxes are lower in the United States than in Europe, and energy costs about 4 times less than in EU. Well, I don't know, in California, the damage is estimated at 250 billion US dollars. It is about as much as they pumped into Ukraine. Those are compatible figures. And probably what we have seen during the international events like the
У них проблем-то у Соединенных Штатов очень много. Там нищета на каждом шагу, если сойти с центральных магистралей. Поэтому, когда Китайская Народная Республика и Российская Федерация выступают за равноправный честный диалог с Соединенными Штатами, это означает прежде всего то, что мы отстаиваем принципы международного общения, закрепленные в уставе ООН после того, как закончилась Вторая мировая война разгромом германского фашизма в Европе и разгромом японского милитаризма на Дальнем Востоке. И наши руководители договорились совместно отметить эти два
ask you a question about the situation in Armenia. We see that they are trying to make sure Armenia goes the wrong path. And it becomes a hindrance to its very existence. It is being done to the detriment of centuries-long Russia-Armenia relations and in the interest of Europe. We all know that Armenia has blocked its participation in the CSTO, and we also know that Armenian authorities ignore a number of events held on the Russian platform. At the same time, a short time ago, just recently, Armenian authorities started dragging Armenia into the European Union. It announced a referendum on the membership in the EU, and today we learned that Armenia is going to sign a document on strategic partnership with the United States. All of this is happening against the backdrop of real threats coming from our neighbors. It's happening against the backdrop of a growing likelihood of a new war. How does Moscow see the situation in Armenia, and what's your assessment of the developments? And a second question, if I may, regarding the 80th anniversary of the great victory that you have just mentioned. It is a great victory, it is a shared victory. The contribution of the Soviet people, including the Armenian people, to this victory was quite significant, as we know it. Would you agree that this victory and the memory of this victory is one of the foundations on which the strategic alliance between Armenia and Russia should base itself? The autonomous non-profit Eurasia organization, I'm a member of this organization, is very active. It has been very active over these 7 months in the Eurasian space. We are actively promoting the preservation of historical memory. We try to uphold traditional values. And I can say for sure that there is a broad interest for this initiative coming from our young people. In October, we held a large-scale event in Yerevan. It was attended by more than 1,000 Armenian students. Not only did we celebrate the holiday, but we also paid tribute to the victory in World War II. We laid flowers to the eternal flame. Thank you. While answering to your second question, it is something sacred for all peoples, primarily of the Soviet Union. They faced attempts of genocide on the part of Hitler occupants, but it is also sacred for all of those who fought as part of the army or partisan units of the countries and partisan movements, those who tried to uphold the truth, those who fought against Hitler army. In many countries, Nazi collaborators tried to commit attacks against those people. We never forget it. These parallels are obvious. Napoleon seized Europe and used it in order to go and win Russia. And the same happened with the Hitler Germany, when dozens of countries, occupied countries, countries that were occupied by the Germans, sent their militaries in order to destroy the Soviet Union. And by the way, when Biden made his recent statement on the foreign policy, he said proudly, they have managed to strengthen the NATO and the allies. He said 50 countries were recruited in order to help Ukraine, as he said, but in reality they fight against Russia. So history repeats itself. Everywhere there are elements of superiority. The sense of superiority, as well as the wish to pursue what is called Bonapartism nowadays. During Hitler times it was called fascism, and Nazism also serves as a banner for those who once again tried to destroy our country. So these anniversaries are sacred and something that's being done by the public organizations, in addition to what is being done by the governments, is extremely important. I know about your work in Armenia, not only in Yerevan, but also in other countries and in villages, in other cities and villages. Our embassy actively cooperates with them on the tracks where we can combine our efforts. I'm talking about the Immortal Regiment, the Victory Dictation, and the Garden of Remembrance, and similar campaigns. Those campaigns try to make sure that we talk to the young people and prevent them from forgetting the history. Our diplomats take care of the burials and memorials. And on the whole, we don't have a slightest doubt that the peoples of Russia and Armenia are friendly and trustworthy nations. And the relations between our countries will always base on these reciprocal feelings of friendship. As for today's relations on the official level, they are not easy. You've mentioned just some facts. We have already commented on them. For example, when the law or government's decision was adopted to initiate the process of joining the EU, our Vice Prime Minister, Mr. Overchuk, is an experienced man. He's been dealing with the Eurasian Economic Union and its enlargement, its development for a long time. And he said it frankly that those things are incompatible. Those are two different FTAs, two different systems. Related to duties and customs duties, they don't coincide. Let me remind you, back in 2013, after our multiple reminders, the then President of Ukraine, Mr. Yanukovych, pointed to the fact that negotiations that had been conducted with the EU for a long time then about the Ukraine's association with the EU, those negotiations implied that some parameters are to be adopted, and if they are adopted, there will be in direct contradiction with the CIS standards. And by the way, Ukraine enjoyed these rules as member of the Community of Independent States. They were close to zero. With the EU, in trade with the EU, Ukraine had significant trade barriers with the EU. The duties were relatively high. When we were joining the WTO, we traded significant elements in order to protect our services. If Ukraine continued having zero tariffs with the CIS states, and if it were to obtain similar zero tariffs or close to zero tariffs with the EU, it would mean that the goods would flow from the European Union through Ukraine to our territory without any tariffs. That's something that we explained to the Ukrainians.
When
the Yanukovych government became aware of that, and when they figured that unless they did something, we would impede Ukrainian imports to Russia and they would suffer, bearing in mind that a lion's share of their trade was with CIS, not Europe, they just then asked to postpone the association agreement signature by several months to think it over. And actually, our proposal was to sit down together with the European Union and Ukraine, with the European Commission and Ukraine, at a table and think whether Ukraine could get benefits from the association agreement and not lose the benefits from the CIS FTA. And José Barroso, quite a haughty person, and he then said that was none of your business. He said we don't interfere with your relations with Canada. So anyway, coming back to Armenia, the decision of the legitimate Armenian leadership to start accession to any international group where they are wanted is their sovereign decision, but, weighing up all the pros and cons also would be the responsibility.
Экономическим блоком. Вы упомянули, что Армения заблокировала участие в ОДКБ. Они просто не участвуют в мероприятиях, но справедливости ради они официально.
Those people there have been looking into matters that are not relevant for Armenia, but rather of interest for some Western groups.